Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Padhye, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Zach Angelillo. He's a former fullback at the University of Northern Colorado. He also played linebacker, fullback at Cal as well. So Zach, welcome into the show. Appreciate you for taking the time, making this happen. So I appreciate you for that.
Yes, sir, Yash. Thanks for having me on.
So as with every guest, I like to kind of take it back to the beginnings, to where it all started. A little bit nostalgic there, but talk about that a little bit and kind of your early years in football. Kind of what's your earliest? Let's start with this. What's your earliest football memory?
Yeah, so I started playing tackle football when I was in fourth grade. We had a really good team. I remember when I was young. The area I'm from, Fresno, California, we have a lot of guys. Football's big where I'm from, so we have a lot of guys that I played with, going from elementary school, middle school, high school, that, went D1 for college, or a lot of guys in the NFL now. And I remember when I was in fourth grade, Jalen Johnson, who's now one of the starting cornerbacks for the Chicago Bears, he played running back for us, and he was really good. And we had a lot of other guys on that team as well. That I ended up going and played D1 college football. So I just remember, even from a young age, another guy, Trent Tompkins, he plays quarterback and wide receiver at UC Davis. A bunch of other guys, that ended up, going on to bigger and better things after high school. And we were just so competitive from such a young age. And that was definitely something that, just my first year playing tackle football, it was like very competitive and fun from a young age, and definitely got me hooked going forward.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads into my next question, kind of answered that a little bit, but talking about kind of what drew you to football versus, did you play any other sports growing up, or kind of what drew you to what made football kind of stand out versus, say, basketball or golf or other sports like that for you?
Yeah, my mom would laugh because she would say that I was always a very rowdy kid. I loved to roughhouse, and kind of my friends were the same way. We would always be wrestling or playing pool basketball, and more so drowning each other than playing basketball. So we all just played football, and that was just big for us from a young age. We played basketball too, and I liked playing basketball. I played basketball from, I don't know, third or fourth grade through my freshman year of high school. And then after my freshman year of high school, I just wanted to focus on football. But yeah, football was always my passion. It was what I was best at sports wise too. I just love the competitiveness of it, physical nature, and just the team building too. And it was also kind of a circumstantial thing of where I grew up, with how important football was in my community, and how much emphasis it was put on. Football is where it's at, and all my friends played, and all their older brothers and everything played too. So it was just always what I was drawn to from a young age.
For sure. And what would be your earliest, or not your earliest, sorry, what would be your most memorable memory from your youth, playing youth football, playing pee-wee football, whatever it was, youth football, before? This is pre-high school, so what would be your kind of most memorable moment that you can remember playing youth football?
Playing youth football, that's a tough one. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering all that little stuff when I was a little kid. But I would just say being able to play with my friends, growing up, like I said, it was just, we were all so competitive and everything. So I think just having that competitive nature even as a young kid, just amongst all my friends too, that was really memorable to me. And I was also very lucky where a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, I had been playing with them since we were little kids. So by the time we were freshman, sophomore in high school, we'd already played together since we were in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade.
So that team chemistry and that bond was a lot easier for you guys.
Definitely. I would just say that being able to we won a lot of games when we were younger too, and that was fun. It was it made it fun because we were winning a lot as well. So
Yeah. Winning always helps, man. Winning is winning is fun, winning is addictive, and again, like you said, it makes it a lot more, like, makes football a lot more fun when you win games rather than the other way around. But you mentioned high school there, Zach, so we'll jump into kind of your high school career. Kind of talk about that, expand on that, describe your high school experience playing football. You mentioned how you had played with guys since 4th grade, 5th grade. You guys already had a good team chemistry going, but talk about your high school football career and what kind of stands out to you within your high school football career.
Yeah, so I would say when I came into high school, I was a pretty like skinny, lanky kid. I was like about 6 foot and 155 pounds. So I was playing like strong safety and wide receiver.
Yeah.
And which is when I had played mostly in like 8th grade and then just transferred on over to there in high school.
For sure.
And then towards the end, so I played JV when I was a freshman. And then the last couple of games of the season, I got pulled up to varsity for playoffs. And I remember the middle linebacker who ended up going to Stanford. His name's Ryan Beecher. He was like a stud linebacker from my high school.
Yeah.
And he got sick. Like he got really, really sick, I think the week before playoffs started. So I got pulled up to varsity. And I remember the varsity head coach, who I'd known since I was a little kid, but he was like, hey, so Beecher went down, so you're going to be starting at middle linebacker. For this playoff run. So, little scrawny freshman me, I was playing middle linebacker for a couple playoff games. Yeah, and that was fun. And I stuck my nose in there and did the best I could. And I remember though at that time I was like, man, I really have to hit the weights and get stronger and everything going forward. So
the weight room too.
Yeah, definitely. And the strength coach at my high school is amazing. I still have a great relationship with him. His name's Will Hamilton.
Yeah.
And he's always been like a big mentor to me and a friend now. So we really got in the lab together over the summer and put some size on me and everything. And so it was kind of funny. I entered high school at like 155 pounds.
Yeah.
Pretty scrawny kid. And then when I left high school, I was 220. So I've grown quite a bit of size throughout high school and definitely worked really hard, and I'm grateful that I had Will to help me out there and guide me and coach me along the way. But I think for me, just like my high school experience was very much like football was my main focus. And any of my friends or any of my teammates that went to high school with me, or even the people that went to other high schools, they would kind of know that that's what I was known for. It was like football was pretty much synonymous with me. And I was just very committed and driven to it. I knew that I wanted to make it to the next level and play in college. And I would say like towards the end of my sophomore season and junior season, it kind of became apparent that I had a good chance to do that. And then when I started getting offers following my junior season, I was stoked because I had been working, really hard to get to that point. And that's something that I talk to a lot of kids from my community, to this day, and I'm connected with some various coaches and trainers there. And when I'm home, I talk to their kids, and like Alon Page, he's a trainer back in Fresno, and he does some great work in the community. And so whenever I'm back home, I meet up with him and the kids he's training and talk to them. And something I always kind of emphasize to them, and I try not to say it to like the younger kids, the kids that are in like elementary school, middle school. Because at that point it's like, hey, like just be a kid, like have fun, play with your friends, all that. But the kids that get into high school, particularly when they're like sophomores, juniors, I tell them, I'm like, hey, if you really want to go for it and you want to play in college, you're going to have to commit a lot of not only your time, but like your mental energy and everything. Making sure you're doing things the right way in the classroom too. Because I know a lot of kids, not necessarily like me or any of my friends, but some kids would have all the talent in the world, but not necessarily be able to make it to the level they want to in college because of their grades and stuff. So something I always emphasize, like, hey, you have to really take care of your business, not only on Friday nights when you're playing, but throughout the off season, putting in work on your body and everything, taking care of things in school, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely like to look at myself as an example of doing things the right way in those regards. And that's just what I emphasize to the kids that I talk to. Like I remember, let's see, a couple of years ago, I was home over a Christmas vacation, and there was this kid named Logan Stutt. He
Okay.
went to Buchanan High School, I think. So not the high school I went to, but
Yep.
another school in the area. And I think he was like a freshman at the time.
Okay.
And he was, like he kind of reminded me of me, honestly. He was a pretty like skinny kid, said he was playing linebacker, and I was like, you got to put some size on, and but I could tell he loved football and he really wanted to make it to the next level. And I remember basically having that talk with him and telling him like, hey, if you want to make it to the next level, like these are the things that you need to do. Yeah. And there's no way to cheat it, really. Like you either put in the work and you make it or you don't.
Yep.
And that kid ended up, I think he's like a 3-star recruit now. Had a couple Power 5 offers, and he just committed to Fresno State. So he's going to stay home and play for the local team. And I spoke to him the other day because I just reached out and like said congrats and everything. And it's like, to me, it's rewarding seeing people that are like willing to put in that work and grind for themselves. And I told him I was super proud of him because I was like, I remember meeting you when you were like 15 or something a couple of years ago, and you were like, hey, I want to play college football. Like, what do I do? And I was like, hey, you went out there and you did it, man. So you should be proud of yourself. But basically, just sum it up, I think like my high school experience was very much like I enjoyed high school. Like I was still a kid for sure. Yeah. But I knew from like a young age that I had goals that I needed to work really hard to achieve. And I think that's just something important to recognize is like making it to, Division I college football doesn't happen by accident. Yeah. And especially when you're a kid with me that like, yeah, I had some talent, but by and large, I had to work for a lot of that stuff. And I had to really kind of like earn the respect I was given and all that. So definitely, being committed to those goals, I think would summarize my high school experience.
For sure. And moving into, I mean, it's true, right? Whatever you're passionate about, whatever you want to move into, you have to have goals. You have to work, right? Not everybody is talented. What they do. I'm getting my PhD, so I'll connect it there. I'm not the guy with the highest IQ in the room, whatever it is, but you're always working at what you want to do. Same thing with you, right? You said you were 120 pounds or whatever it may be when you started, and then you bulked up, you got better in the off season. Now you were 220 when you left high school. And so, it's great to see, and it was great to see you, ball out the season you were at UNC as well, that I got to see out here, and kind of transitioning now into the college game. And before we do that, you talked about a key aspect there, the mental aspect of football and being mentally everything, having that situated and correct. Talk about that and kind of what percentage of football do you see as more physical versus what percentage of football do you see as being mental? Is it a 60-40 split? Is it 50-50 physical, mental? How do you see that playing out?
I'd say it's hard to put a percentage on it. A lot of coaches will be like, oh, this game's 90% mental. Yeah. I think there is some truth to the fact that it does require not only a lot of mental like strength and grit, because it is a hard, physically demanding game, but also, the way that I've always looked at the game was it's more strategy based than it is just pure athleticism based. Yeah. And I think especially my last couple of years at UNC, when I was like the old guy in the room, right? And even my last year at Cal as well. Yeah. When I was like the old guy in the room and the younger guys would be kind of like, trying to pick up a college playbook for the first time and everything. Yeah. And you could ask any of the guys that I played with there at either school, but I was always putting in extra work on film and, studying the notes that I took during meetings and all that, and really trying to master the playbook. Yeah. And not only like my specific role in the playbook, but the whole concept, right? So as a fullback, for example, if we're running like a inside zone lead play where I'm leading up on an inside backer, I need to know, hey, what's the footwork that the offensive line is using? where's the quarterback's path for the exchange with the halfback?
Yeah.
How's my entry point going to be like if if the defensive line's an odd front versus an even front?
Yeah.
What happens if the safety comes down in the box? Are we going to plus that one over? So we're going to count him in the mix, and then I have to push over to the Will versus the Mike backer.
Mhm.
Whatever the case may be. So I've always looked at the game from a very strategic and analytical standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think in college that really gave me the edge where I might have lacked like some speed or quickness,
Mhm.
because I was able to think a lot faster than I was able to run. So I was able to, diagnose things very efficiently. And even on the field, like it's funny because we would be watching the film on like Mondays or whatever.
Yeah.
And the coach would be like, "Did you just turn around right before the ball was snapped and say something to Jaquez or whoever the running back was?" I'd be like, "Yeah, because I saw the safety come down, over the number 2 receiver when there was already a linebacker pushed out. So I
Yeah.
knew that one of those guys had to be blitzing off the edge because they wouldn't have 2 over 1 in space over there when they had a 1 high safety."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was like, "You were able to, figure that out just by that." And it's like, yeah, because I saw it on film 10 times before. You know what I mean? So it's just stuff like that that I think in terms of like mental preparation, if you're
Sure.
able to kind of study tape like you're studying for school or whatever, like recognize patterns,
Yeah.
be able to pick stuff up like that. I
Mhm.
would say being able to play like above the neck. So I remember when I was at Cal, we
Yeah.
had a DB named Cam Bynum. He plays for the Vikings now, but
Yep. Yep. Yep.
he would always joke about being like above the neck, and he would go like this.
Yeah.
But that was because Cam wasn't like a crazy fast guy, even for a DB. Like he was fast, obviously, but not insanely fast.
Yeah.
But he was just so cerebral and able to diagnose things from the back end that he was just able to play like he was much faster than he is.
Sure.
And he would be like, "Come on, man, I'm fast." I'm like, "You are fast, Cam, but like you're smarter than you are fast." So being able to play above the neck like that, I think definitely helped me in my career
Yeah.
and hopefully help the guys around me. So
For sure. And again,
mental side is
it's
important
a
for
team
sure.
game. So if you're able to diagnose something, you're able to understand something, you're able to communicate that, like you just said, to the running back. It's only going to be able to. I know, coach. First year now coaching at the high school level here. It's like our coach preaches that it's a team game. We need all 11 guys doing their job, and if you're able to, like you said, diagnose something or understand the way the defense is structured and communicate that, it helps those 10 guys as well as yourself operate on a more efficient level. So I love that. Say it like how you were talking about, like, you seeing that on film 10 times and how the importance of film, because I think a lot of people forget that or don't really understand that, the importance of watching film and learning from the film itself to improve to yourself and improve your gameplay. So speaking
Yeah, 100%. And I think like another thing too with watching film is a lot of people will confuse like spending a lot of time watching film versus getting a lot out of watching film. And I remember, so like against was it University of Wyoming, my second year at UNC.
Yep.
I picked up that when their inside linebackers were going to blitz, just as soon as the ball was snapped, just like a strike blitz like that, they would really have a hard time with like controlling their body from like leaning forward, like before the snap. So, when I'm down in like a 3-point stance or whatever, and I know like, hey, it's second and short, they have a tendency to, blitz their inside backers on this down and distance. I'd be kind of like looking through the offensive line at the like legs of those linebackers and see if they were kind of like twitching in their calves or like really like hard on the balls of their feet. And I remember showing that to the guys in a meeting room on like after like the Wednesday practice that we had. And a couple of them were like, "That's such an obscure small thing like that." And I was like, "Well, it's a trend." And watching film isn't always necessarily about picking up like, this is exactly what they do at this time,
well, that's
this
the
down and
difference
distance or
from
whatever. Yeah.
us drive stalling out versus you guys moving forward and scoring a touchdown, like
Yeah,
an
exactly.
efficient drive. So even the little tiny things, I love that how you're paying attention to all the details and the importance of the details, which I think a lot of times are lost or mistaken in a sense. But it's great to see how you did that throughout your college career. But talk about you transfer. I'm interested in understanding how the transfer portal, because the transfer portal NIL has gotten so big now. It's crazy how that works, and I'm interested in how that process works. So you went to Cal, you were a linebacker at Cal, then they transitioned you into a fullback, and then you transfer out to UNC. How was that transfer? Kind of talk me through that transfer process and the transfer portal.
Yeah, so my transfer situation was kind of like a mutual thing between the coaches at Cal and I.
Okay.
It was just, for a variety of reasons, it was just time to move on. Wasn't necessarily like any ill will on anybody's side. It
Yeah.
just, in terms of, the way that they wanted to operate the offense going forward, and my capabilities and skill set just didn't align. So I ended up graduating from Berkeley in 3 years. So I got out a year early.
Okay.
And then, which kind of goes back to like what I was saying about taking care of business in high school, school wise. I took a bunch of AP classes, and pretty much when I stepped on campus as a freshman at Berkeley, I was already ahead credits wise. And then obviously taking summer school while you're there, working out the summer. So I was able to graduate a year early.
Yeah.
So after my third season, which was the COVID year,
Yeah.
I had that conversation with the coaches, went in the portal as a grad transfer.
Okay.
And I spoke to a couple schools. I spoke to a couple schools pretty shortly after I had gone in the portal.
Yep.
But none of them pulled the trigger on sending me an offer. So I was in the portal for several months, pretty much the whole like spring semester of school.
Yeah.
And I was just working out on my own. I always joke that that was when I was like in college free agency, because I was just training on my own, and not even at like the team facility. I was training at like a public gym in Berkeley. And so I was just training my own, running on my own, doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of got to a point where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get an offer to keep playing somewhere. So I started updating the resume and everything, and started looking on LinkedIn for jobs and all that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was like, dang, like, I guess this is it. Kind of a bummer of an ending to my football career, but nothing really that was in my control. But it was kind of funny. I think it was like April or May of that spring. So by this point, I was like, getting ready to graduate, and kind of thinking like, all right, I'll probably take a couple months in the summer to relax a little bit, and then start a job in the fall.
Yeah.
And Max McCaffrey slid into my DMs on Twitter. And he was like, hey Zach, like, this is Coach Max from UNC. Would love to get on the phone with you about possibly bringing you up here if you're interested. And I was like thinking to myself, and it was almost at that point where I was kind of like, I don't want to say like gave up, but kind of just accepted that. I was like, hey, I just, it doesn't seem like I'm going to get another opportunity. I'm not going to like go to JUCO or whatever. Like, I've already graduated college. So I guess this is just kind of the end of the road for me. But then when he DM'd me, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even care like what it is or whatever. I just want to go play. Yeah. So I got on a call with him, and he was like, hey, we want to, bring you in, be our fullback and everything. I got on the phone with Coach Ed. Just talked to him about some things that were important to me, and we had a lot of things in common. And so he was like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And I said, perfect, I'll be there in a couple of weeks. So kind of just packed up my my life in Berkeley and brought it over to Greeley.
Yeah. No, it's always interesting. I always talk to guys about, or who have transferred, or about that process, because, as you know, NIL and transfer portal, that's a whole nother, that could be a whole nother podcast episode, just talking about that the whole time. But I like to get a basic idea of how that process has played out for guys. So it was cool hearing that. And again, it's cool, the opportunities that football gives you, and it's always about, and always about, continue to try, continue to work harder, continue to get better. It's great. You were working out and staying in shape and staying fit, physically fit, stuff like that for an opportunity. And it's great to see how things worked out for you that way. Now you're in Greeley, now you're still in Colorado, working in Colorado. So it's great to see that process working out for you. But we'll move in. I like to do a little bit before we end the podcast segment. I like to do a little bit of a rapid fire segment just to have fun with it. So I'll ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Zach, just anything off the top of your head. Go for it. You ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. Do you have any pregame, or did you have any pregame rituals in college? Or pregame superstitious things?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was that weird. I just liked to go to like a quiet place in the locker room, and just like put on my headphones, and kind of like get in the zone like about 10 minutes before we went out for kickoff. And I don't know, I feel like that's pretty common. Like most people do that. I just kind of like collect myself mentally and like get ready to go play. Superstition. Yeah, I don't know. Big smelling salts guy. Other than that, like I don't know.
Oh, you're a big smelling salts guy, dude. I got some of these from
by the desk. I love it.
Smelling salts.
Wake up in the morning.
Yeah, help you wake up. So
yeah, I would say just for me, I just like to listen to music and just have my headphones on for a couple minutes before we go out there and like get away from everybody and kind of just compose myself before I go out there.
You mentioned
definitely crazy superstitious.
Headphones there. Favorite pregame type of music that you listen to pregame, or what is your go-to pregame music with the headphones?
It's gonna sound kind of crazy, but like I didn't have a specific playlist.
Okay.
Like I didn't have something set.
I
didn't have something set like this is the song I listen to every time before I go out and play. It would kind of depend like how I felt during the week. Honestly, like my mood at the time, and it wasn't always even like something like super like head banging like crazy. Like sometimes it was just like I don't know, like a Zach Bryan song or something like that, where I would just kind of like get in the, get in the zone.
In the zone, yeah.
I didn't have like a super like set in stone playlist. Just kind of went with the vibes. Yeah.
Yep. Favorite stadium that you played in? It could be either during your time at UNC or at Cal, whichever you look at. What is out of your college football career, your favorite stadium that you played in college? I know the Pac-12. They've got some nice.
I'm gonna have to separate the two. I think because they're just different kind of experiences. Obviously, from like Pac-12 to Big Sky.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to include the home stadium in either of those. So Bears fans and Bears fans don't get offended. But I would say when I was at Cal, well, it was tough too because I would say, well, we did play at Ole Miss when I was a redshirt freshman. So my second year, we played at Ole Miss when I was at Cal, and we won. So I would say winning in an SEC stadium as like an away team, that was pretty fun. And it was a pretty rowdy crowd. So that was pretty fun. We played in the Rose Bowl when we played UCLA, but it was during COVID and there was nobody in the stands. So that was like kind of weird because it's such a big
stadium,
big place. But with nobody in the stands, it just felt weird.
Yeah.
I would say at UNC.
Yeah, let's transition to favorite Big Sky stadium. There you go.
Yeah, UNC. I would say the best fans, like the most passionate fans, and again, this is not including the home crowd.
Yeah.
But when we played at Montana State, my first year at UNC, that was fun.
Yeah.
So those fans were going crazy. It was packed out.
Yeah.
We got beat pretty bad, so that wasn't fun. But like the stadium experience for sure was fun.
For sure.
And I would say my last college football game, I played on the Inferno, the red turf at Eastern Washington. Yeah. And so that was kind of a funny experience where like I was excited to play there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny, like walking off that field for the last time. And it was like, dang, like this was the end of my college career. And like the end of my football career, and then it was like, yeah, I'm looking at this red turf. Like it was kind of a funny, it was kind of a funny experience. Like this was very memorable. Like last college football game on red turf.
For sure.
So yeah, those were a couple ones that kind of stood out to me during my time playing.
For sure. And then what's the best piece of advice that you've received? Could be in your life, could be in your football career. What's overall, what would you say is the one piece of advice that you'd consider probably the best piece of advice that you've received?
I'd say I'll separate those two. I'll say in like personal life or just in life in general, having high integrity definitely is a big one.
Yep.
Living up to what you say you're going to do, telling the truth, even if it might offend people or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And kind of just like sticking to your word. Like if you say you're going to do something, follow through and do it the best you can.
Yep.
And I would say in football, just being the best teammate you can be in whatever role you have. So what I mean by that is like when I was a freshman at Cal and redshirting, I was like scout team superstar, right? Like going crazy on scout team and some of the older guys would get pissed off, right? And they'd be like, oh, like chill out, whatever. And it's not like I was doing like cheap stuff, like hitting after the whistle or whatever, but just like going super hard in practice, even though I wasn't, going to play on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I was always commended for that by the coaches, even when it annoyed some of the older players.
Yeah.
So that was like, in my role at the time, I was the best teammate I could be because I was getting the guys a good look so they could go out there and play on Saturday as well.
Yeah.
And then
but the scout team guys don't get enough credit. I'll say that.
You need scout team guys that put in good effort, but know how to practice the right way. Because a lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but like some young guys, they'll be like upset that they're not playing. So they kind of either are lazy during scout team or don't really pay attention and give the right look or mess around or whatever. And so you need guys that play hard and do what they need to do to give the right look for the starters. And then as I got older, of course, like getting more into a leadership role and being more, looked up to by the younger guys and stuff. I just really took pride in like connecting with those young guys and being a good leader to them and everything. And I think like the guys at UNC especially, because those were my like senior and redshirt senior years, those young running backs would definitely say like, yeah, I lived up to that. So I remember, if they ever needed anything, I told them to call. I would have those guys over for dinner all the time. I'm a big cook. I love to cook, so I would always make dinners for them and stuff. And I remember on senior day, the night before senior day, I wrote all of them like a letter about like, hey, like I just kind of like private stuff, but like like just kind of like shared some thoughts with them. And when I got to the facility in the morning, I just put it in all their lockers, So just like little stuff like that. Like I feel like if you have a positive impact on like the younger guys when you're an older guy, you can really start like what evolves into a really strong culture. And I know a lot of those guys now, like they're leaders at UNC now. You know what I mean? Like Jaquez, Red, Caden Neese, like a lot of those guys, like they're leaders at UNC now because they worked hard and they weren't afraid to like learn from the guys that had already had some success, right? And that were doing things the right way. And so, I was really proud of like the leadership that I displayed, from the end of my time at Cal and then going into UNC. Yeah,
no, leadership is big as you get older, mentoring the younger guys, helping out the younger guys. And like you said, it permeates through the team. And helps to build that culture, that positive culture within the team. I will say this, man, you brought up you love to cook and you're a good chef. Every time you post on Instagram those meals, man, I get hungry. I will say that.
Appreciate it.
Man, this is I could eat that right now. So, no, I appreciate you on that. But you mentioned like having that positive impact and having that sense of pride and seeing that positive impact that you've left on the young guys. So as we close out kind of the episode here, I want to give you a chance to kind of impart advice to younger guys. And, I always tell our guests, Matt, if you're in a scenario where you're talking to, and you do that, you already mentioned that earlier, you do that with your high school back at home and talk to those young guys there. But what's the one piece of advice, if you were talking to high school kids or kids that are coming up that are truly passionate about playing at the next level, playing at the Division I level, like you have, what's the one piece of advice that you would say stands out that you would give to those kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think just summing everything that I've said already up, I would say just do the little things right.
Yeah.
Whether that's making sure your grades are right so you can get into whatever college is recruiting you.
Yeah.
Paying attention to your film study, working hard in the off season, all that stuff, because what happens on like those, what a high school play, like 10 games or 9 games or whatever in high school, what happens on those 9 to 12, I guess we have playoffs or whatever, Friday nights. That's not just a summary of like what you did in the week before. That's a summary of the entire year, right? So if you're doing the right things, those little things the right way, throughout the year, throughout the off season, everything, then those games are going to take care of themselves. Like I remember in high school, I had so much fun, especially my senior year. Like I had so much fun, just playing with my boys, and like we won our section that year and everything. And this is because we had just worked so hard that off season going into that year. And I was the leader of that team, and I really took it upon myself to like tell those guys, I was like, hey, like let's finish off our careers together. Let's finish it off on a good note. Like let's win some games, let's have some fun. And we worked really hard, and I was always the one too, like, hey, if I'm not holding up to the standard, like I expect you guys to get on me, and if you're not holding up to the standard, I'm gonna get on you, right?
Sure.
And so it was kind of like those are the guys, like I've literally gone to school with them, most of them since kindergarten. And we were just so tight at that point, and we knew that the way we could communicate with each other and get on each other, we just pushed each other so hard. And so we did all the little things right leading up to that, last year all playing together, and it was really fun. It was really a memorable year for sure.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of, I read a quote a couple of weeks ago. It said, if you can't do the little things right, you're never going to be able to do the big things right. So it's like, you got to be able to set those little goals and do those little things correct in order to get to the level that you want to get to. So that's great. Great advice, and kind of what you've talked about, throughout the episode. It's been great, kind of advice, and great, for young guys, and kind of how it's very admirable how you've been able to mentor all these guys and impart your knowledge and have such a positive impact, not just on the football field, but off it as well. Because, like I've heard coaches say, our head coach at West says it all the time, is, football's not forever, right? You got to use these lessons that you learn in football and impart them in your life. And it's been great to see kind of how you've been able to do that, and have such a positive impact on all these different guys from Cal to UNC. And again, that's the beautiful thing, I think, of football, is the places that it takes you and how it allows you to impact so many people in that manner. So that's all the time.
Absolutely. And being in the position that I've been into, where I've had such great role models and leaders, whether it was when I was younger in high school versus, or, younger in my career at Cal, like a bunch of older guys kind of setting that example for me too, definitely laid the foundation. So I'm very grateful for those guys as well, for kind of setting that ball rolling, putting it in motion for me.
That's the key thing I tell my guys too, is to have that sense of gratitude as well. Because I think a lot of times, and I see that in you talked about it just now, about how all that stuff is just having that sense of gratitude, being grateful, all that stuff. And because again, you can only play football for so long. And so it's like, you got to take advantage, be grateful for the moments that you do have, mentor, help each other out in that sense. So it's been great to see how you've done that, and how you fared. So, but that's all the time that we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast. Again, want to thank Zach Angelillo for coming on. I know it's late, so I appreciate you you sticking with me on this. I'll have Zach's social media on the screen on YouTube. I'll have the little layer with all your social media handles, so you can follow Zach on there as well. Kind of follow his post football career as well. So you can follow him. You can find our podcast, my podcast, on YouTube, Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, you can find this podcast at. So Zach, once again, man, I want to just again thank you for taking the time out of your day and doing this. I appreciate it. So yeah, thank you very much.
You got it, Yash. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.